Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Deliver It. This is your Agile Product Owners podcast. My name is Corey Bryan, and I want to be the last to welcome you to 2016 because that gets old after a while and nobody wants to hear it anymore. So if that's true, then I hope your 2016 is going along well. We skipped a show period because I was going to take some time off, and I've done that, and now we're getting back into the swing of things. And thankfully, you do not have to listen to me talk to myself again. I actually have a guest. So finally I was able to convince Sarah Kahn to come on and talk to me about UX design and product ownership. So Sarah, let me intro you. Sarah's a spy.
That's the best intro I've ever had.
She's a ninja. No, not a ninja, a spy. She's been doing UX at Safran Technologies, Intel, for about a year. Previous to that, she was worked with me at Deutsche Bank. She tolerated me for a while. She's worked at several other places, and she also is the co-leader of the RDU chapter of Girl Develop It, which is a national nonprofit that's committed to powering women to pursue careers in software, and is a conference speaker. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
What's happening? Are you excited?
I'm very excited. I didn't tolerate you at Deutsche Bank. You were my favorite product.
Okay, good. Excellent.
You never yelled at me.
Oh, well, that's always, product owners should never yell at people they work with.
Nobody should yell at people.
Nobody should yell at people they work with.
I think these are rules to live by.
The rules to live by. That's right. So Sarah's going to be joining us to talk about our main topic. And I do have some other bits of news that I want to go over. The first one being that, Bob Galen, who we talked to on episode 18, wrote an article last week, about some of the things that, we said during the podcast. One of them being about the fact that, I was making decisions where leadership wouldn't make decisions, that I felt comfortable stepping in and making a decision where they wouldn't, and his thoughts on that. So he expressed some reservations, some ideas, some thoughts. It's a really good article. I encourage everybody to go read it. We'll put a link to it in our show description. And what do you think about product owners making decisions for leadership who don't or won't make a decision? It's very common.
I think that sometimes they need to.
I think they do too.
So the experience I've had is a lot of times leadership, I don't know how we're defining that here, but if you're talking about business leadership, they know maybe more about budgets and running a company, and they may not have all the information the product owner has. They might not have done all the research. Right. The product owner is kind of up to their elbows every day in what this thing is and what the marketplace is and what the customers are, and maybe better equipped. And also sometimes leadership can get lost in endless discussion.
Yeah.
And something needs to be decided and somebody just needs to do it.
Yep.
Then the PO is usually the one who needs to just do it.
And I think, so I understand where he's coming from. I understand why he was asking those questions. And I responded back about why I was thinking some of the things I was thinking on. The really good idea that I got from that is this is a good topic for another show, is to talk about how product owners make decisions. So that's something I really thank him for doing, for diving in and asking those questions that have been, he's been tossing around his head ever since he did that show. So that was good. And the other one that I read recently, was by, Fabrice Warnger, talking about prioritization of epics and how it's a vicious circle. How if we're working on one epic and we're trying to prioritize that, what do we do for the next epic that comes along? And how do we not get behind on our planning activities with the big projects that product owners and product managers are actually trying to sequence to get ready for the next thing? Because the team needs stuff to work on. We need to do some planning. We need to do some early estimation, and that becomes an endless, vicious loop. And it can. I always welcome the busyness of it, but when it got to the point where it was just work for the sake of work, that's when it got real boring. So I like that article. He's got a good take on that. And then an article I think that matches what we're going to talk about today, which is 4 design skills every product manager should have. So one of the things I think we're going to definitely talk about is how a product owner and a UX person are different. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to do the same thing, but I think there's a lot of crossover and some things that will help us really communicate well. So one of the items is advanced user research skills.
Mm-hmm.
So UX does a lot of interviews and a lot of observation of users.
Mm-hmm.
And as the product owners, we can actually take and learn a lot of that ourselves to help contribute, not take over, but contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is basic interaction design skills. Can you draw on a board? Can you draw on a napkin? Can you draw on a tool like Balsamiq or like anything, or using PowerPoint, God help us, or Excel, God forbid. Don't use that. Don't do that.
Don't ever
use something
do
like
interaction
Balsamiq.
Design in Excel.
Yeah.
Balsamiq has a free trial and it's very nice.
At the worst, take pictures of your whiteboard sessions.
Yeah.
That's better than Excel.
That's, it's got its place.
Yeah. So I really like that.
Especially.
Yeah. Any other tools you think you've seen product owners use that are good for basic wireframing?
Well, I don't know if product owners in particular are using, but there is one out there called UX Pin. That's kind of an all-in-one website that lets you prototype things and share it in one space.
Oh, okay.
Which is nice. There's a tool called Sketch that has a little bit more learning to it. Balsamiq is still one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy for anybody to pick up. And then you can create something rather than trying to communicate with maybe a designer using a non-common language.
Yeah.
You can create a design variable or deliverable that everybody can look at and understand this is what we're talking about, create a common language. So it's good.
Yeah. I've always liked drawing things when I have ideas or sketches with designers as well. The third one that they have listed here is taste. Have a sense of taste, preferably good taste. And that's subjective, right?
Can it be taught?
Can it be taught? I think so.
I think good taste. Okay.
So if you show me a color palette and you show me these are pleasing color palettes because of X, Y, and Z, then I can start to learn that these things kind of go together, or tell me why they go together, or something like that. Right. Or tell me why this style is better than that style. Those are things that I can actually learn and apply to the future, where I can say, oh, I see you've done this, so let's keep that consistent when we go through. So I think that's an interesting one. Elementary knowledge of visual design concepts is number 4. Similar how
I see a lot of overlap between that and like how you define taste.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just like knowledge of color theory and how the human eye works is where a lot of that decision making kind of is driven from.
Okay. And I like that one, just like I like the fact that we should know some basics of testing, some basics of development. We're not going to do those roles, but we need to understand when people talk to us about automated testing or what that means or what benefits you get from Angular or something like that. Then talking about wireframes or, these elements in a design, it would help for us as product owners to go, oh, I see that you're doing this there. So I like those 4. So 4 good ones to talk about. Just as a product owner. So I want to do a couple of shows where we talk about product owners working with different types of skill sets. And one of my favorite skill sets is design, because it is a very creative endeavor and it's a very thoughtful endeavor. And I like both of those aspects of it. It's not that I don't like development and testing, but those are pretty, I've dealt with those a lot. And they can get creative in testing, creative in how they solve problems with code. All that's good. But I just like it because it's fun for me. So Sarah is, an expert. I will call you an expert. Yeah. Valid.
I guess.
Okay. At UX and done it at a bunch of places. So we're going to talk about product owners and how they work with designers, both in good sense, how they can help each other, some things we want to make sure we don't do, and then some tips that we've both found in working with the other side, and things that we've learned. So personally, I like working with a designer, like I said, because it's fun, right? We get to build better products because we're working with designers as product owners, and to use their expertise. Product owners are not going to be the experts in design. We have people that are experts in design. Let's bring them in and let them do their job. I think it helps when we define the problem better. I think we can define a better a story for what we want to try to solve with designers in the mix, because they can think through some of those things, not from the technical side, although they certainly will, but through the usability side, through how are somebody actually going to use this product.
Yeah, definitely.
Understanding your users, doing that research.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest places where product owners can be a good partner and advocate for design. Is sometimes there's this idea that those POs or product managers talk to the customers and then they bring it back to the team, and then the team takes that information and they choke on it like a machine, and then they spit out a design.
Right.
Which doesn't really work very well. I mean, we'll get into that a little bit later,
but yeah, helping the user research, helping the personas come up with who's actually going to be using this thing. Let's pick some personas. And granted, if we've got, 60 possible users, which ones do we want to concentrate on?
Right. And that's where the PO can really help a lot, is putting a framework in place that helps the UX team be more effective and more efficient.
Yeah.
Whatever time that they have with the customer, depending on what the situation is.
Yep. Another reason why working with a designer is important for us to understand is because the designers are going to work very closely with the implementation teams, or they're actually going to be on those teams as well, in certain circumstances. So understanding both, how they're going to work outside the team and with the team, I think is very important for product owners to understand and plan for, so that we can get the best result. So some goals that we want to have as product owners working with designers. The UX folks are going to own the how of the design. I'm not going to dictate design to them. Right?
Yeah. Designers don't generally enjoy functioning as human pencils.
Human pencils. Not a mechanical Turk. All right. Gotcha.
Human pencils or pixel pushers. But when they're in a situation where somebody comes to them and they say, this is this feature that we want, and this is what it has to look like, and this is how it has to be. They've already got a really rigid idea, rather than coming and saying, this is the problem we need to solve.
Right.
Let's brainstorm an idea together.
Yeah.
One is very closed in, and one is very open and presents a lot more possibility.
Yeah. So always when you're talking to UX, and tell me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but when we're talking to UX folks, we want to talk about ideas. We want to talk about problems that we're seeing, and not just say, here, go do this.
Right.
Right. Okay. A lot of the time we want to just design that whole experience that the user is going to have for the product. Now, we may be building our MVP, but we can still have a good experience with our MVP. We can still have a good flow through the application with our MVP.
Yeah.
And plan for what it would do later. We want it to be creative. We want there to be something new to this, or something interesting to this. What's different about our application or our product that we're building that is going to interest the users, not from a technology side, but from how they're actually going to use this app. It helps to focus designers as well as product owners. If we can help focus the areas that they can work on, so the stories that they're actually going to work on, or the different features or that type of thing, it helps to kind of focus either on specific areas or priorities of those areas.
Absolutely.
And then the different behaviors and actions we want out of the application. So do we want the application, do we want the user to be able to find what they want in 3 clicks? Do we want them to, have I'm trying to think of different ways that I've used, UX to kind of flow through an application, to click on certain things, or to say, let's think about, I guess a good way that I usually think about this is, what do we not want them to do? And then let's don't build that. So let's have a good flow where they can get in and get out, if that's our goal. If our goal is they live in this application for 8 hours a day, then we design an application for that. If our goal was we want them to spend 5 minutes in it, or call an Uber, or find out where their car is, that's a much different experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually teach a UX class for Girl Develop It, and one of the things I always tell my students is it's really important to decide up front what it is you're trying to accomplish, because how else will you know if you accomplished it? Which seems like a really basic concept, but some teams kind of miss that mark. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so some of the other things we want to do with designers is we want to help them. So how can product owners help UX folks? the biggest one, I think, is we can establish the goal and the vision for the product. We need to know what that is. We need to know which direction we're headed, what we ultimately want to do, and we can help talk in their terms. So similar to what we talked about is the elementary knowledge. But I think if we can talk about this is the goal and this is how we want UX to contribute, or how UX can be seen to contribute with this effort.
Yeah, I think one of the other big things is to approach a project as a team.
Right.
Rather than saying, this is what this person does and this is what that person does, and kind of chop up the work in that way, but appreciate that even if if product management, product ownership are different, that's a different role than doing design, than doing user experience research, than doing visual design, but there is a lot of overlap, and there are areas where you will work a lot better together because more heads are always better. So approach it not as a fight, and as a we're all on the same team and we're here to make a good product together. Yeah,
it's the collaboration effort of it, right? Okay. Help them understand the business objectives and the value that the product's going to recognize when it's there. So what do we want those folks to be able to do? What are they going to be able to do with it when they get it?
I think that's a huge one for designers, because a lot of times design can be set up as a cross-functional team, and each designer may be working on multiple projects. And particularly if they're new to a business domain, they don't really have that background knowledge, and that's the expertise that a PO really can bring to them to kind of help them get up and running so that they can even start to do research. There's a lot of domain knowledge that you really need to fill in the gaps before you can be effective.
Right. And I think one of the 5 whys game is a fun one to play here with the UX designer to talk about business value and or business objectives and value, because, we want to do this. Why? Well, because we want to do this. And you keep drilling down. And then when you find the actual why, that's what you design and build the solutions for, because that's really what your customer wants. I think that's a very powerful thing. If we have some standards, let's find some standards, or let's come up with some standards, whatever they are. One of the things I hate is when I've got multiple teams working on a project and I can tell which team did which part of the application. Oh, yeah. Right? It should be the same throughout. I don't care who worked on it. We should have some standards, both design and coding standards. And those standards, the UX people can help come out with, if we've got corporate color schemes, or we've got patterns that we want to establish in our application.
I think it's hugely valuable. And I guess when you have an application that's disjointed like that, that's to me a communication problem amongst whoever it is that's creating design collateral or documentation or whatever. And it's a huge value if the design people from different teams can get together and agree, these are our patterns, or even if they, some places like what we did at Deutsche Bank is we ended up creating a front end code library with HTML, CSS, a little bit of JavaScript that the different Scrum teams could take and then plug in, and all the UIs would look the same. Yeah. Or mostly the same. I mean,
for the most part.
CSS kind of, everyone knows how that is, but.
Yeah. So that's good. Help them get ahead of the teams. So I've worked both ways. I've worked where the UX person was working with the team on the team's cadence, and where the UX person was working a little bit ahead of the team to kind of come up with the ideas that the team was then going to implement. I've done it both ways. I don't really have a preference. I've seen it work and not work in both conditions. But I think if we want to talk about working a little bit ahead of the teams, because we'll talk about working with the teams in a minute, the product owner can really help establish the priorities for what's the next thing that we need to talk about designing. Yeah. Help them flow that design through that system, and then get it ready for the teams to actually pick up and schedule and plan that work.
Yeah, definitely.
I know that, it's very similar to running, it's 2 teams in the same sprint, but I think the most powerful thing is having the teams participate in the design when we do a design review. So if you're sprinting as a designer on a board or on a concept, when you get done with that concept, let's show it to the team. Let's talk to the team.
Yeah, it's absolutely about providing enough structure so that there can be really excellent communication. The most effective teams that I've been on we were able to, even when we were still at the whiteboarding, like really rough idea stage, go grab a couple developers and say, is this feasible? Are we on the right track here? Is this something that you guys think you could do? And then get their early feedback, their very early feedback before, you're halfway through a sprint and it's, oh my God, we can't build this thing. It's killing the performance is terrible. We can't do this. So just getting all of the implementation stakeholders involved really early. And then by the time that you're handing off mock-ups or wireframes in sprint planning, they're very comfortable with it. They already know you've been working on this for a little while and they've seen it a few times, and things just go that much more smoothly.
Yeah. To me, it's very similar to having a team see a story 2 or 3 times in grooming before we actually start to implement it. Same thing with the design. Yeah. Once they see it a couple times, get comfortable with it, and then they are able to go ahead and implement it later.
And it doesn't make it just implementation smoother. It also, that little bit of buffer allows time for user feedback, which sometimes can get neglected in Agile, unfortunately, because of the cadence of the scrums. People struggle with where do you fit this in. When you're in design, you're basically kind of sandwiched between 2 sets of stakeholders. You've got your development team, and they're your customers in a way. And also there's the business stakeholders, and they're also your customers. So you're delivering requirements to one and working with them on that, and I'll need to translate that into something that's buildable by your development team.
Yeah. Giving them cover to work and iterate. So what I mean by that is, just like product owners and scrum masters should be protecting the team so they can get work done, the designers are going to need that same type of protection so they can get their designs done and their work done. They can't be on the phone with somebody whenever anybody wants to make a change. They have to be
we've never been in that situation together before.
Never. They need time to think. Like I said, it's a very creative and a very thoughtful process. They need that time. They cannot be showing every line they draw to somebody. They need some space.
There is also such a thing as too much feedback, or feedback from not the right person.
Right.
In order to get the good feedback from users or potential users, you kind of need to frame the concept that you're showing to them. And a lot of people have trouble with really rough wireframes. Rightfully so, but so if you have a little bit more time to make an interactive prototype, for example, that makes a lot more sense to them. They understand what it is.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I found. It's similar to when you're looking at we've talked about this before, but when you're actually showing a wireframe and it's a low fidelity, and I like low fidelity wireframes simply because here's a concept that we have.
Right.
Does this concept speak to you, or can you understand this concept? Versus here's an almost done prototype that has the correct numbers in it. Does this look right to you?
Yeah, and we're already very committed to it because we've devoted a lot of hours to making this thing. Whereas if it's really rough, you can change it. But you have to balance that with there's an element of education. If you have a really educated stakeholder, then you can show them a really rough wireframe and have them understand what you're doing.
Yes.
If you have somebody who's never worked with a designer before, that might be a little bit more of a process. You might need to take the time to develop a deliverable they can understand.
Yeah.
Because I've definitely had customers that I tried showing wireframes, and it was a little too early for them. They were kind of hung up on the colors, or lorem ipsum. What's this? Is there going to be some kind of a strange language in the application? Like, why is it black and white?
Yeah.
Do you really think that Comic Sans is the right font? And, not that these folks were ones who would recognize what Comic Sans is, but there's definitely an element of education, which I think that the PO has a huge role in helping with.
And I think that's when we're introducing those things to the stakeholders, say, okay, here's some concepts that we're working on. Yeah. I think the words that we choose when people aren't educated enough on the processes that we're doing, I think is key. So if we introduce these things as concepts or thoughts or experiments or ideas that we have, and let's talk through these, and we know they're not final, but let's see what we think of these and actually guide them through that process. Then over time, they start to see it. That's the reason I really like Balsamic, is because it is intentionally wavy lines. It's not, you can't draw a straight line in that program, right?
Yeah.
And it uses Comic Sans because it's here's just concepts and ideas. It's the same thing as the people that are walk into houses and they see the living room is red and they say, I can't buy this house because the living room is red.
Yeah.
It's paint. You can do something. Look at the system. Look at where it is. Look at the architecture. It's on the cul-de-sac. Do you like 2-story houses or not? Don't concentrate on the red room. It's fine. So give them the cover to help them do that. Plan and execute. So they need to be able to know the work that they need to do in the next couple of sprints. And again, what is the first priority? What do we need to work on first? When do we need to get this done?
Also, how much time do we have?
Yeah.
I mean, you just said when do we need to get this done? But I mean, with research, if I was told I had 6 months to design a feature, I would do an exhaustive academic user study because I would have the time to do that.
Yeah.
But if we're rolling it out in 3 weeks, we're going to do some rough and dirty, guerrilla testing and get it done.
Yeah. And I think that helps too from, how much do we actually need to do versus what do we need to do right now?
Yes.
So if we know this project's going to go on for a year, but we need to get something out in the first 2 months, then let's concentrate on that. And then we can come back to it, if we need to. So give them time to plan and execute and plan it just like you would any other team or any other sprint. Have your backlog, have your, most often I've seen designers working kind of weekly sprints, if a sprint at all, if it's not just a flow based system. Yeah. But when they do their sprint, plan a sprint. I know we did that. We said, okay, here's the 3 or 4 things we're going to work on or that the team's going to work on for this week. And then we'll have a demo on Friday and it'll be quick and everybody will be happy and we'll go to the next thing.
Everybody will know what to expect and when things are coming. There won't be phones ringing off the hook. Where's the new wireframe?
It's coming.
Yeah.
Here it is. It's on Friday. And that was really, that's something I think the product owners can be very important about. So we talked about giving them cover and giving them that space is when there's a question like that, the product owner is the one answering it and saying, you'll see it at the demo on Friday. You'll see it at the demo on Friday, or we'll take that up in the next sprint. The same type of thing you would do with any story for an implementation team you do with a UX design team. I think that was supposed to be ground their thinking in reality. So, so when we're talking about things, we want to make sure that there's going to be grand ideas and there's going to be, wouldn't it be cool if.
Designers want to be creative.
Yes.
I remember one project, last spring, I think it was, we took a crack at it without knowing very much about requirements at all. And it was very clear that essentially what this tool was like a flow tool. Somebody was marking something as either essentially done or not done. And the design team kind of had some fun with it. And we're like, what if we just made this UI where it's almost like Space Invaders and there's just things coming in and you just have to pop them into one basket or not. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's just a visualization. And of course that was never, ever going to fly in a million years, even when we toned it down quite a bit. So.
But it was fun to think about.
It was fun to think about. But
for a while.
Course, there's a point where PO has to come in and be like, no, come on, you guys. These are bankers.
And that's usually where I like to see, I like that thought process to go on for a little bit and then say, okay, which one of those ideas do you like best? Or did that lead to something else? There's a kernel
of something that you can use that comes out of that, which in that case, I think we had a really nice heat map that came out of it.
Sure. That's the discussion. That's the reason that I like to let that discussion go for a while because something good's going to come out of it. Yep. You dial back the fun, not the fun. You dial back the crazy. You find the fun.
You designers.
Stop having fun, damn it. You dial back the crazy, you find the fun, and that's where you actually go, this would be cool if we do this. And that's what you actually push.
But practical.
Yes. Practical. I like changing things up to help get the group inspired. So I love my pens and my paper and boards and everything else, finding different ways to help them get creative or find out what ways they want to use to get creative, to solve a problem. Maybe it's going outside and working. Maybe it's going to a different space. It's taking a visit. I've seen all kinds of interesting things, to help the team kind of think differently. Not to use the Apple logo or whatever from a while ago. But have you done anything like that where you just said, okay, let's do something different? And
I would say the biggest thing working with a design team is change of location. Sometimes we would go together to a coffee shop or a restaurant and go work with a beer. Yeah, I can't really think of anything just super awesome and original that we've done that worked really well. It's mostly just carving time out of our day to think about things together, even if we weren't all assigned to the same thing.
Right.
Although, actually, my new team my adjacent team.
Mm-hmm.
They're based in Oregon, unfortunately, so I don't get to participate in some of these things. They do some really kind of out there stuff. They do things like Sparkle Friday, where everybody has to dress up in sequins, and there is a prize for the most sparkliest outfit. And that everybody's like, oh, you crazy designers, but I mean, what the end result of doing things like that is they're a close-knit team, and there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and they have some really great ideas that come out.
That's cool. Not the sparkle part, but the
sparkles are totally cool.
Okay. I'll concede that point to you.
Twitter, make note. Corey Bryan thinks that sparkles are not cool.
I'm boring. I'm sorry. I'm bland in most things. Okay. So let's talk about some differences, between the UX and the product owner. So I think the product owner owns the coordination. Product owner owns the strategy and the stakeholder management. Mm-hmm. I don't think designers want to do that for the most part.
No.
Sarah doesn't want to be specific.
I think it's as different as every team has a different way of handling things based on just everybody's skill sets and competencies and personal desires.
Right.
But I do think that the process stuff lives more on the PO side.
Yeah. As well, direction that we're headed in, I think, is the product owner helping set that. Yeah. And then decisions. So we have to be able to decide some things, or we have to be able to work with the stakeholders to make those decisions. Yeah. It's important for the UX folks to understand that, just like the team they're there to contribute and really help us do this. But we, as product owners, we may make bad decisions, and that's our fault, but it's our call for most of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I really see the role of UX in that way, in providing information and insight and helping to inform those decisions, but not being the one that makes the call.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So one thing that I think is important, cause I think it fits at least with the agile space, is design thinking, the concept of design thinking. And I know a little bit about it, but Sarah, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about it?
So to me, design thinking is something that you don't have to be a designer to do, but it also kind of is the process that many designers will go through. And it just means that before you set out on something, you do research first. You understand who the customer is, who the user is, what the space is, and you define what you want to do and what your outcome is, and that you come up with ideas and you go through the whole flow of prototyping, getting feedback, and then implementing.
Yeah.
Which is it's really just agile.
It really is. It's very similar to a lot of the lean thinking. It's very similar to a lot of the agile thinking, at least the values of it.
I think it really just refers to, at the root of it, it's getting information before you do stuff.
Mm-hmm. Enough information,
right.
Yeah. So there's lots of, good things out there on design thinking with the different steps that are actually going through. But yeah, to the point, you don't need to be a designer. You just need to think about, who are our users? What do they want to do?
Right.
Here's an idea. Let's see if that idea works.
And for, really to have a design driven workflow, the whole organization, or at least the whole team, needs to buy into design thinking. It doesn't mean that everybody's doing design. It's just knowing that that's a value and kind of a way of thinking about things.
Yeah, I think there's a step after that, which is this is a cycle that repeats.
Yes,
so after we test an idea or after we show something.
Just because you test it once doesn't mean you're done now.
Yeah, we got to go through that loop again.
That some teams can fall into, be like, well, we UX'd it. Yeah. Put a stamp on it and put it on the shelf.
We verb that thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
I have absolutely heard that used as a verb.
Yes.
But yeah, it's not that you get to test the entire application and say, all right, this is done. It's very much on a feature by feature and change by change kind of a basis.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that the new thing is, needs to flow through and gather information about it and challenge your assumptions.
Yeah. Very good. So there'll be, I think I have one article that I'll put in the references, for that. Yeah. It's from the Harvard Business Review. In September was, talking about design thinking coming of age. So it's a very good article and very good way to think about things. So some tips for you as the product owner to work with designers, or if designers are listening, tips for you working with your product owners. I think one of the things that product owners can do, so we're going to see a lot of designs. We're going to see a lot of ideas. Don't just say you don't like that or you do like that. Talk about why you like something, or talk about why you don't like something.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things I try to do when somebody brings me a design and they're like, make it like this. Well, what is it that you like about it? You like the color? Is it, you like the general flow of it? It may actually turn out to be some really tiny little detail about it that is or isn't relevant to what we're trying to use it for or borrow the idea for.
Yeah. Don't make them guess. Yeah. Don't sit there and go, I don't like that. Come back with something else. Tell them what you like, what you don't like. Be specific.
And it's the designer's job too to kind of help guide that feedback and help people give more detailed feedback about it. But definitely being aware that saying, no, I don't like it that's not very helpful, and it's a way to have a frustrated designer.
Yeah, and we don't want that. Ask some questions about the interactions. One of the things I'm learning, and it's going to be a long-term process for me, is don't ask why questions, because that usually puts people on defensive. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? And it's different than the 5 whys. So ask a question like, what would a user see when they do this? Or how is somebody going to go to this screen? Yeah. Those types of questions.
Those are very helpful questions because, even as an interaction designer, it's very difficult for one person or one team to see every single case. Everybody approaches it differently.
Right.
So that's actually something that's helpful to get from POs and everybody else that's involved too, the devs and any users that you may be working with at that point in time. You would frame that question differently with the users, but just trying to consider everything from every angle.
Right. So I like those types of questions. Ask for options. So there isn't one design. There's going to be lots of design. There isn't one idea. There's lots of ideas. Ask for options. My daughter is taking an interest in doing interior design. And one of the things that I told her was, I gave her a project. I said, go rearrange our bonus room, our playroom, the furniture, not the walls or the curtains or anything else. Just rearrange the furniture, but give me 3 options. Because I want her to understand that there's more than one way to do it. Yeah. And the way that I pick may not be the way that she likes, but she understands that there's different choices.
Yeah.
So, have lots of ideas, have lots of options.
Yeah. We have a visual designer at the bank who's really good at providing lots of options. And once I asked her, which one do you like? And she said, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't put it in front of you.
Yeah.
So she is completely okay
great.
With all 7 options she's putting in front of you. She's 100% okay with you picking any of them. She's not going to let you pick something she thinks isn't good.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. Prototype. Show design sprint work to teams. We talk about that, but do lots of different prototypes in lots of different ways to show that. They could be code prototypes. They could be, just wireframe prototypes.
Yeah, we have a lot of great tools now. Some of this is resource dependent. Sometimes designers know how to code. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's a kind of pet developer who lives on the design team who does prototyping. But we have a lot of great interaction tools now. I'm blanking on the one big one.
I think
earlier.
Cooper did a list that I'll have to find and drag out.
There's so many tools. They proliferate like crazy, and it's awesome. Options are really great to have.
Yeah. And like we talked about before, they may be their own team. The UX folks may be in their own team. It may be a team of 1. It may be a team of 5. You may be working with one of those designers or 2 or 3 of them, or they may be part of the implementation team. It really depends on how best you're working. But treat them as if they're their own team, treat them as their own team.
Right.
Designing in code is an interesting thing. I've seen a couple of people do it. We talked about, using an actual CSS style sheet that you can actually go through.
That tends to work really well for small teams. I've worked at a lot of startups where, as the designer, I actually owned the CSS. And it was because, a lot of developers don't like to fool around with CSS, but also it was really convenient for me to work in a low fidelity fashion with wireframes with the team, getting feedback, doing whatever, and then just skipping right past making high fidelity mock-ups, just making it HTML, CSS, and then handing it off to a developer to be plugged in.
Right to product.
Then I'm happy with the way that the UI is, at least when it leaves my hands. And it's eliminating a step.
Do you think that has to do with the maturity of the product as well, or the teams? How far along you've gotten if you could do something like that?
Yes, I think that's very much an early product kind of thing.
Okay.
In the startup where I did it the longest, we kind of built up a nice workflow around it where things would be in kind of a beta and they were hidden in a feature flag. And then they often an actual developer would rework some of the code.
Yeah.
Before it was put into production. But I mean, ideally, you probably don't want designers deploying code to production.
Probably not. No. Yeah. Okay. One thing I like is sticking things everywhere. So let's have designs. Let's have all kinds of, early prototypes on a wall where we can reference them so that we can see all these things. Let's have them everywhere.
Design is visual, so make the workflow visual.
Yeah.
Plus, nobody ever remembers where the SharePoint repository is.
No.
I mean, as much as you want, you can email everybody and say, check here for the latest version. Somebody's going to print off an old version and they're going to be walking around with it with highlighter on it. And it's very difficult to keep that from proliferating. So you can kind of control it by keeping it somewhere where people can see it when they come see you. They know where it is and what it is.
Yeah. And as product owners, if you don't have whiteboards everywhere or pens and paper everywhere, if the UX group is in a different part of the building than you are, or if they're on a different floor or whatever else, when they visit you, have those tools there with them. Because when you start a conversation, they're going to want to start drawing something, or you're going to want to start drawing something. So make sure you have all those things available. Make sure your Scrum Master gets them for you, or you get them. Have them handy. And some things not to do, product owners, please. Do not think these are just about pictures. This isn't to make it pretty. This is about workflow. This is about experience, what behaviors, what emotions do we want our users to have with our products.
And it's about brand also sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's about, you said emotions. But it's about the way the human brain works and how people consume data effectively. And there's a lot more that goes into it sometimes than you may realize if you haven't educated yourself, like those 4 tips that Corey said earlier, educating yourself about the basics of visual design and user research. You'll learn a lot, that there's a lot of human psychology that goes into design choices.
Yep. Do not, as a product owner, design the product for them. Don't be like Sarah said.
Human pencil
don't
thing.
be a human pencil. Don't come in and say, do it like this and do it like this. Give them the freedom, I'm going to say, use that word, to come up with something that is better than what you could, but give them the right information to make that better choice or to come up with that better idea.
Yeah.
And don't go with the first answer. So whatever the first design is, take it as a starting point. Don't take it as the ending point.
Yeah, absolutely. That goes back to the design thinking.
Yeah.
We have a concept here. Let's test it. It's an experiment.
See if it works. And don't let them get beat up by another group. Again, you're there to protect them, or that's part of your role is to help protect the teams. They are part of your teams. Protect them. If somebody is abusing them or somebody's being, a jerk to them, and they need to let you know. And I've yet to work with one who wouldn't let me know. And then be able to provide that cover for them and help them, be able to do what they're good at.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. So now, Sarah, I'm going to ask you 3 questions.
Okay.
So the first question for Sarah Kahn, what are 2 of your favorite apps or programs that you use in your personal life and why?
Oh, my number 1 favorite app is Evernote.
Evernote. Okay.
Evernote. It's just so useful.
Yeah.
It's beautifully designed. I find it to be fairly intuitive. I enjoy the fact that it talks to pretty much everything. There are integrations for all different kinds of things. I was doing user interviews a couple weeks ago and I ended up with a bunch of video files. You can plop your video files into your notes. You can put pictures. You can have, it's interactive. You can have to-do lists in there. It's very stateless. You can have it on your phone and on your tablet and everywhere. And it's everything,
Just updates,
everything that you need everywhere. It's basically my external brain.
Okay.
It's how I get through my day.
Yes. All right. Very good. And the second one?
The second one, it's hard to choose. I think Slack.
Slack. Yeah.
Slack is also, it's not doing something particularly original. It's just doing it really, really well.
Yeah.
It's not the first, multi-state group chat client that
They've
we've
had
ever
those
seen.
for 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Practically. Back to IRC days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
But again, Slack, it connects with everything, and it's everywhere, and it's seamless.
And it's beautifully
and
designed.
It's beautifully designed.
And it works.
Yes.
Wonderfully
Very
well.
robust, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. What is the second question? What is the second most amazing thing you've seen a product owner do?
The second most?
Yes.
What
Not
was
the first.
What was the first?
This is your list.
Oh, man.
But what's the second?
Second most amazing thing. What was that tool that you had to install that we had the students build?
The tool that I...
So one time we had, we were working with a team of students at a local university, and we had gotten them to build a little application. It was a thing for the students to do, and there was not a development resource available. So the product owner installed it on the machine where it needed to live.
What was that?
Oh, it was the moving app.
Oh, the moving up thing.
Yeah.
Our office location.
Yeah, you got in there and installed it on the system.
All right.
I felt like that was kind of amazing.
I don't want to code anymore. At least I've been buried in TFS hell for the last couple of weeks trying to figure out how to make that work.
Yeah, like you don't want designers coding, you probably don't want product owners coding.
No, definitely
but
not.
I am always impressed and have respect for people who will dig in and write some code or do something technical. They don't throw their hands up and say, no, I can't do that. That's not what I do.
Yeah. Okay. And number 3, what product ideas are you most excited about for the future?
Ooh. So, the company that I work for, Saffron Technology, was recently acquired by Intel. And we have been acquired into the new devices group. My company makes a cognitive computing platform. So speculation, is all over the internet about what Intel's going to do with cognitive computing and wearable technology.
Right.
But I'm really interested and excited about wearable technology. CES just happened a couple days ago, and I got to see some really cool things. I get to see the things that are happening and, that my colleagues are doing within our own group. I mean, watches are just the start of it. I mean, Samsung demoed an app or a little thingy that allows you to listen to your phone through your finger.
Your phone through your finger?
Yeah, it makes use of your blood to deliver vibrations.
Wow.
So the person is like sitting holding their finger in their ear.
Wow.
And they're listening to like a voicemail or something. And I don't know how they're going to do the mic. Like I wish it would be the thumb.
Yeah.
But you could be like, hello.
So you'd actually do the old, when you get the old
like
handheld
on the
device.
phone.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are things that are, in the near future.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool, and I'm really interested in the UX of these very natural user interfaces now that the technology is kind of caught up to where you can actually manipulate everything with your hands, and you don't need this clunky metaphor of a laptop computer.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen some things that were projections, like it was like a bracelet, but it had a projection on your arm. Yeah. That was basically your keypad if you were typing or something like that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research and stuff that's going on with we're electromagnetic organisms. So how do we tap into that for computing?
Yeah.
So it's like your own body network.
It's weird.
It is.
Well, it's cool.
It's
a little scary, but it's interesting to see what they'll do.
In 50 years, I guess kids will all be doing it, and we'll be like, I don't want one of those
Well,
things.
100 years ago, we weren't washing our hands when we had surgery, so who's to tell?
Yeah. So I think that's the area where there's going to be some cool things coming out.
Very good. Okay. If you have any feedback or any questions about product ownership, let us know on Twitter at DeliveritCast, or you can email us at deliveritcast@gmail.com. Please do drop a rating on iTunes or share the show around. Tell your friends and other product owners about it. We are still looking for a new co-host. You can submit your auditions online, and we're having a contest of sorts. Bob Galen has been generous enough to donate some copies of his Scrum Product Ownership book, which is a fantastic book. And if you don't have a copy of it, you may win a copy of it by sending in a question. I'll pick the best question each show, and you'll not only get a copy of that book sent to you, but we will include a custom handmade bookmark from Kim. She made a Deliver It Cast bookmark, which you can see online, and I will include one of those with the book. So all you gotta do is ask a question. It could be about our topic, it could be about a general question, or about anything you want. The best question each show wins a book and a bookmark. So we have one question today that we want to ask, and it's UX related. Phil said, or asked the question, we have just added a much needed UX designer to the team that will both help clarify stories for development, but also take and complete stories that only require the UX skill set. How do you handle point estimations for items that will only be handled by a single member of the team?
Well, so here's the way that question is worded incorrectly. That person is essentially a one-person team.
Yeah.
They're not a one-person member of the team. So if you think of them that way, then you can think about how they're going to establish their own cadence. Mm-hmm. They may be working on multiple projects. Many UX people do. I know I do. And so, they can allocate various periods of time to your project. Mm-hmm. And so I think you can start to track that over time the same way that you would with any team.
Is that basically what you do if you've got, let's say you've got a week to do thing and you're working on 4 projects? Do you look at the priority of each of those projects? Do you look at reserving some time for each?
Oh man, I wish I still had a picture. You've seen the wall that we used to have
at
the bank.
Yeah.
I was on a design team there. We had 3 or 4 people, and we had a row for every project that was currently being worked on by the team, and each week we would rank them by priority, which we tried to get feedback on priority from the powers that were at that time. And there were 3 columns, doing, pending, and done. Pending was kind of a place where we were either getting feedback from stakeholders or we were getting feedback from development, but it wasn't ready to go into sprint yet, or it was, there were changes made because with design, there's this whole design process and things cycle. So it was keeping everything very visual in that way, kept us honest. We would have our daily stand up and we would look at it and say, okay, what's on fire today?
Yeah, just for the UX folks.
For the UX team. And, different product owners would come over and try to lobby for their thing to be done sooner. But they, essentially they had to get in line because they were a customer.
Yeah. So how did you, let me ask you this. So if you're working with multiple product owners for multiple products, who gets to decide what you're working on?
I tell them to fight.
You tell them to fight?
Fight it out amongst themselves.
You don't get involved at all?
Well, I guess it depends on the situation. But honestly, if there's a point where I'm that snowed under, I'm not going to spend time refereeing. I'm going to send them to, up the chain.
Yeah.
Because design reports to somebody.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at is who's the ultimate design authority to say this project's more important. You guys need to work on this project.
I would hash that out with either the head of design or whoever it is the design team reports to.
Okay. Did you guys, to the point of the question though, do you actually estimate the work that you're doing in points or t-shirt sizes or anything else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did t-shirt sizes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And points was a little bit too granular really for what we were doing. I mean, if it had been needed by a bigger project or a more long-term project, I think we definitely would have been able to do it.
Okay. Very cool. So hopefully that helps Phil about estimation. And Sarah Kahn, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For being here and joining us. You can follow Sarah. Now I'm going to butcher this. Actually, I don't
know if it has
how do you say it?
It doesn't have a real pronunciation.
Okay. So
it happened that, I had a rebate check years ago for something or other, and this was the name that they sent it to. That's what they got from Sarah Kahn.
Fantastic. So Sarah Kahn is her name, and her Twitter address is AARAHKAHAK, which I guess is pronounced Arakakak.
I don't know. Erica Huck.
That's her Twitter account. We'll put a
loud.
link so it's easy to find it.
Yes.
She'll be on the show announcement so you can find her. And her other Twitter account that she uses a lot is with the at GDIRDU, which is a Girl Development
RDU chapter. It's
right.
Not just mine, but I do tweet from it.
Yes. And her own personal website at conlab.com. Anything else you want to pimp or talk about?
Well, if you're interested in Girl Develop It, we are celebrating our 5-year anniversary tomorrow, actually.
Sweet.
So if you look on Twitter, you'll see the hashtag GDI Day, and they're going to be publishing all kinds of things. They're doing a big media campaign and trying to drum up more support and awareness for the organization.
Very good. And there's chapters
There's
of that
chapters all over the country. There's
all over North America, really.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you, Sarah, and follow Sarah for good design information. Or ask her questions.
Yeah, you can ask me questions.
Very good. All right. And now it's time for our little disclaimer. These words are our own and are not endorsed or representative of any company or organization. You can find me online at iscoreybryan on Twitter or infrequently blogging at don'tyellatme.wordpress.com. Thank you very much for helping me deliver episode 23, and I will see you next time.